Hello and welcome to today's episode. I hope you're all doing amazingly well from whichever part of the world you are watching. It is boiling hot here in Madrid. We're going up to nearly 30 degrees, and I've got the marathon on Sunday. So let's see how that'll go. And hopefully, I won't be timed out again this year. But come what may, I know I'm completing it. So that's what matters. Okay, today's topic. I continue to take you on my journey, the messy, very messy journey of writing my second book. How? I have to admit, I completely underestimated how, I wouldn't say difficult. I mean, I like difficult. I like challenges. I'm always up for one. I didn't expect it to be this, I wouldn't say challenging. Yeah, maybe the word is challenging, but it's in a very different way. It's requiring me to think beyond what I normally, how I normally think. And also it's stretching me. I'd say it's definitely stretching me. I'm someone who's got, who's very clear with, I have my, and this is Spanglish, but I have my ideas clear. I'm not someone who you easily derail from my train of thought for all the good and the bad for that's worth. But you know, I tend to have things very clear. And this time around, what I'm clear about is that the book plan is not quite what I want it to be. So, yeah, I'm probably driving everyone nuts right now, but I really want it to be solid. I feel that I've not yet quite, got that red thread nailed or dialed in. And yeah, I didn't think it's going to take me this long, but hey, everything in life is an experience. So today, continuing with unraveling my thoughts and noticing the industry, writing for my book. Today, I wanted to talk about the investments that you've made that made sense, but really didn't change anything. And if you are that hotelier who's invested in a wellness offering and it ticked all the boxes, and then you realized it didn't really work or it didn't change anything, then today is for you. Here's what I've noticed. Again, taking a very binary approach because that's the way my mind kind of compartmentalizes things. They are those hotels, properties that are constantly photographed, win awards, are in the best design magazines, are very well, have all the accolades possible, the best write ups, and the best reviews, and are admired by industry professionals. So we look at those hotels, those properties, and think, wow. But when you dig deeper, you actually realize that these hotels were actually forgotten by their guests 6 months later. It just was another beautiful wow hotel that clearly they liked and enjoyed, but were completely forgotten. And then you have at the other extreme hotels that haven't won any awards, wouldn't be put in a design magazine, wouldn't have a line of influencers wanting to write up about it. Nothing remarkable or stand out in terms of design and bling in any shape or form. Yet they have guests who come back again and again and again. And these properties stay in the hearts of their guests for decades. And I want to understand why that is the case. And here's my take. It's the difference is not really about the design. It's not about even how much money has been thrown into the project. It's not even the service, that gold standard service. I go back to it all whittles down to where along the wellness value iceberg these properties were built. Was it at the tip, the visible element, or at the base? Now, I think I've said this, this story that happened to me recently. Probably have mentioned it before, but it did, stick with me. So I was sitting in a meeting with, a hotel chain, and the CEO was present, and I was pitching obviously my proposal, and when they wanted to know more about the brands I had worked, the projects I had worked on, and the typical spiel that I would give, all the fantastic brands I have worked with, all the decades of experience I have, the countries, the projects, from boutique hotels to very large all-inclusive hotels. So the whole nine yards. And they asked me, were there any other properties? So he asked me, was there another property? And I mentioned a few smaller boutique properties that I had worked on here nationally in Spain. And it was a beautiful conversation. And he was also very honest. He was like, well, Sonal, those are properties we don't admire. We don't want to be like that. You see, that is not that when you're talking about that, that is what we don't want. And I was left without words because he was right. He was not wrong. I mean, those two properties, they're far from remarkable and actually good. And there's nothing that makes them stand out. So he wasn't wrong at all. But it did leave this kind of restlessness in me because I didn't quite know then how to actually explain it. And even more importantly, the properties he mentioned that, they mentioned as a group that they admired and all. Yes, they were, dressed incredibly well with all the accolades, won awards, have the best kind of bling equipment, 100%. And clients that, they definitely have the pull. The first time client does come through, granted. But he couldn't see, or the group, the board couldn't see what I was seeing. And I couldn't express in words what I was seeing. Essentially, he was walking into the same trap. And the properties they were admiring were actually the same as these two boutique properties, just earlier in the timeline. So they have built everything based on the visible tip of the iceberg. And these are new operations still in the early years. Let's look at them in 10 to 15 years' time. They will end up in the same trajectory as these two boutique properties 10 to 15 years down the line. Because when they opened, they were the cat's meow. But 10 to 15 years down the line, because they had built their entire wellness offering around the facilities, around the equipment, around the brands, without them realizing it, when these facilities, when these individual elements became obsolete, no more relevant as the wellness world is evolving, what has been left, what's left beneath all of that is really nothing. There's no substance. And these hotels that are being admired will eventually end up. And I'm not saying this in a negative, pessimistic way. It's just when we build something from the visible elements without thinking about why are we offering what we're offering, then eventually the visible will become obsolete. Industries evolve, businesses evolve, sectors evolve, people evolve. So what used to be relevant 10, 15 years ago may not no longer be relevant now. I mean, we've just seen with AI what a huge change there's been. Now just imagine what will happen in 10 to 15 years' time. We can't build our facilities based on the tip of the iceberg, the visible elements. Now, I'm not saying do not build beautiful facilities or do not have the best equipment out there, do not evolve with times. I'm not saying that. We should do that. But it's like building a house, starting with the roof instead of the foundations. You're doing the visible elements instead of the foundations. And the foundation is your why. How do you want to make people feel? What do you want them to feel? And then when you're clear on that, the how you do that, the elements you choose to make them feel how you want them to feel, that can change, that can evolve. But at least it's anchored on something. So today, what I want to talk about is explore three things why this happens. And I've just briefly touched upon the value iceberg and what it looks like when we are building from the tip of the iceberg. So why do certain properties win all the awards, but are forgotten by the guests? And on the other hand, why do certain very far from remarkable properties are just felt in their guests' hearts for decades? Why is that the case? And that has everything to do with the value iceberg and where they're building their entire system, their property from. And then I also want to touch upon what making decisions from the tip of the iceberg looks like. Because I think that will help you understand why certain things or certain patterns repeat. And then lastly, I want to show you what making decisions from the base of the iceberg looks like and what impact that has on your business. So going into point one, why this happens, why certain companies, certain properties win the awards, yet are not felt in the heart of their clients, and some that are very basic properties are always felt, like truly felt by the guests, and people come back again and again. And that is due to the notion that I talk a lot about, the wellness value iceberg. And if we can just picture an iceberg, and at the tip of the iceberg, we have all the individual elements. Just below the baseline, we have the outcomes, what these individual elements are trying to achieve. Guest satisfaction, team satisfaction, commercial sustainability. And those are all important. And if you're able to go, shift your focus from the tip of the iceberg, of the value iceberg, your individual elements, the facilities you're going to put, and instead start focusing on the outcomes, what you want to achieve, you're already a step ahead. However, if you truly want to stay in the hearts of your guests, if you want to go beyond just the visible appeal, you need to go right to the base of the iceberg. And that has everything to do with why. Why are you creating that wellness offering? Why are you building your property? How do you want people to feel in that? And once you've got clear your why, it's a lot easier to measure outcomes, and it's a lot easier to choose individual elements that will help you achieve outcomes based on your purpose. And it also keeps your teams clear. Your people know exactly why they're doing what they're doing. So it's not just merely a job description. They are drawn to your company, to your way of doing wellness. And they understand why a certain treatment needs to be performed in a certain way, or why the room needs to be set up in a certain way. Even the hotel room, even a lobby, even the restaurant, they understand the why. And they get creative with how they deliver the experience we ultimately want our guests to feel. And that is what makes your guest come back again and again. So that is the notion of the value iceberg. Now, what does making decisions from the tip of the iceberg look like so that you can identify if you're actually falling into that trap? This is how it looks like. And trust me, there is no judgment here. I, earlier on in my consulting career, have fallen victim and have even advised my clients on that. So I am not here to say that I'm any different or that, we're all guilty of it. And that's perfectly okay. But here's what it looks like. You have a wellness offering and you have a beautiful piece of space that you want to optimize. You want to offer your clients something additional. So you see what's out there in the market. You build the typical gym, the typical spa, the typical wellness area that you want your guests to enjoy. You hire the best teams, the best, design teams, operation teams, construction teams, best advisors possible, and you build it. And those investments made sense because you've clearly done your numbers, sense checked things. You've done business before. You know that you're making the right decision here. It makes sense on paper, and you can definitely see the return on investment, and it's a realistic return on investment. Yet, 2 to 3 years down the line, maybe the first year you have opened your wellness offering, you've introduced it to your hotel, you have an uptake. People are joining your facilities. People want to come back and try a wellness offering. You can increase your ADR. You're noticing higher occupancy or less fluctuation in terms of seasonality. You start seeing that the first few years. But then you suddenly see that things plateau at one point, that you have new competition in the area, your guests' needs have evolved. So you're not really growing in terms of ADR or occupancy or repeat ratio. And then you begin to decline, the typical kind of bell curve way of looking at things. And you think, maybe once you start declining, you clearly need to take action. And then you think, maybe I need to hire another wellness director. Maybe I need to add another trend. Maybe I need to speak to these people. What are they doing and what are they seeing happening in their market? What have they done and implemented that works, that has worked for them? And maybe we can do that. I'm not saying that doing that is not wrong. And you clearly do not want a wellness leader or a hotel GM that is not taking action. I mean, if your numbers are down or your team satisfaction is down, you want people to take action. You want the corrective strategies to be in place. That is not the problem. The problem is when we become reactive, when we make those decisions, even if they're sensible or what seem like sensible decisions, when we're making them purely from a point of reaction, our wellness suffering is declining. It is because this is what's happening in the market. When we make those decisions to change and reinvest without connecting back to our why are we offering wellness? How do we want our people to feel? If we don't anchor ourselves back to that, any form of change we make is superficial. So it's important that we anchor back to our why. For example, I'll give the example of my twin brother and I. We just celebrated our 50th birthday in London this past weekend, and we're so different. So it's, he's the more fun twin, and he definitely threw a huge party. And I'm like thinking, I could never, ever, I don't think I'm even capable of throwing such a party myself. So clearly, thank God that he organized it. And I looked at his lifestyle. It's a lovely, it's amazing, but I wouldn't be able to get him to run a marathon or keep fit. And I'm not saying we'll go and run a marathon, but he wouldn't do that. And maybe I could get him to run one marathon. Well, that's a lie. I don't think I could ever get him to run any marathon, but maybe 10 kilometers. But he would do that one off, and then he would never, ever run again in his life. And the reason is because that is all superficial. That goes against his grain. He does not run. He does not, his definition of well-being is very different to mine. And when we extrapolate those wellness offerings, the concept of the wellness offering into our resorts, into our properties, we can't implement something that goes against our grain. We need to know why we are implementing this particular wellness offering. And if we are going to add a cryotherapy chamber, if we are going to add some form of biohacking, any form of artificial intelligence, screenings, etc., if we are going to add that, it must resonate with why we've created our wellness offering in the first place, what it means to us, how we want our guests to feel. Because if it doesn't resonate with it, you can do anything. You can build anything. You can throw any amount of money, even when it makes sense. But it simply won't work ever. Because it's not connected to your why. And you will have this constant, revolving door of amazing talent coming in and going, coming in and going. Because they will come in, they'll do their work, but they won't see why they're doing what they're doing. They will perceive that kind of cognitive dissonance, that what we're doing is not anchored on something. We don't truly believe in it. And the concept does not create belief. Your why is what creates that belief. And lastly, what happens when you actually start making decisions from the base of the iceberg, the why? When you start making decisions like that, here's how it looks. You have someone come, put forward an idea, and it's an amazing idea. They have high energy. Everyone loves it. But they also know that it has to tie down or be anchored to why you're doing what you're doing. Why are we offering this wellness? How do we want our guests to feel? Is this true to us? Is this our culture, or are we trying to be someone else? And just asking that simple question, is it true to us, or are we trying to be someone else? That in itself, slowing things down and truly thinking about them before jumping into the investment is key. And you also keep your team highly engaged. They become the number one steward of your wellness offering because they're so clear about the why. They fiercely protect why they're doing what they're doing. And they'll be the first to understand that you can have the best wellness idea. You can also admire it in other properties and other hotels. You can also believe in it personally. But you're equally clear that that works in that place. But that doesn't work for me. It's like my twin looking at me thinking, I admire you can run the marathon. Go knock yourself out. But that's not a lifestyle I want. So if you've made this investment decision that made sense, that was solid on paper, but eventually you have found that it's not really fundamentally changed anything, that is a good sign that you've probably built the wellness offering by making your decisions based on the visible elements, the facilities, the people, the brands that you want to work with, what other people are doing, where is the market, what kind of client do I want to attract, or those are that is the new generation, that is what they want. That is how you'd have probably built your wellness offering. And that is why it probably just worked for the first couple of years and then lost momentum and has eventually declined. And now you're going back to square one, about to repeat the same mistake for the next few years. So you become that hotel that is on design magazines, that is written up on, that has all the accolades. Yet your guests forget you in 6 months' time. Or you can be that hotel that still does win awards, is everything is done perfectly, everything is done well to a high quality. Maybe not super bling, but the experiences your guests feel in your property stay in their hearts forever and ever. Because guests can't get that feeling you made them feel elsewhere, no matter how bling another property is. And that comes through your why, through your authenticity. And these are all kind of ideas that come to me based on felt, not forgotten, and obviously now a number of 2.5 decades experienced under my belt, having made all the classic mistakes we all made, and having properties that, now I have, nearly 2 decades on, seen what was built 2 decades below what projects I worked on. And just being very curious to understand, we made those decisions. We had a very wise team. Solid decisions were made. Nothing overly bling was made either. Um, the intention was clear. We had the best professionals. They did all they could. And they worked very hard. And still, fundamentally, the net effect has been zero. Nothing has changed. And I've learned from that. And I've also observed those places where there's nothing remarkable about the property. Probably even industry professionals do not know about them, but that they have guests and staff that are fiercely loyal. And it all comes down to, are you expressing yourself in the most authentic version of yourself? And how you express yourself is through the visible elements and how you want people to feel, how you want to be remembered in the hearts of your guests. So it doesn't mean don't build beautiful facilities. It doesn't mean spend money. It doesn't mean not worry about service. It just means all those things you do must be anchored to your why. And anything you change or evolve should always be double checked against that why. So, my wellness leader friends out there and boutique hotel owners, I hope you found that useful. Wishing you all a wonderful day ahead. Take care now.